Welcome to Tapped In. My name is David Figueroa-Martinez, and today we're going to be discussing identity and language in Jiu-Jitsu. And just as a hook, I have been a massive fan of writing, the way people articulate themselves, the way they put sentence structures together. I've been a massive hip-hop fan. I have been a huge Tupac, Kendrick Lamar, Eminem fan of these people that just have a way with language and words. So to me, words have had a massive ability to evoke emotions and evoke tendencies and actions within people. So when I hear certain words, there's a visceral reaction out of me that maybe you don't feel with other people. And what I'm going to discuss maybe does not pertain to some people. It doesn't resonate with some people, and that's perfectly fine. My opinion is we sometimes in jiu-jitsu have these ideas where we put people into a box or a category based on the title that we give them. And sometimes it restricts someone, it demeans someone, and it's not intentional at all. Sometimes it raises someone's status, which again isn't necessarily a bad thing or even intentionally meant to give someone extra power, but maybe out of respect because of the time that they've spent within a sport or a gym or whatever we want to call it. So for me, whether you're quote unquote the hobbyist, or you view yourself as an athlete, the professor, I think all these terms have power, and we need to be looking at them and addressing whether they actually fit within the culture or not. I personally believe that as we move about and this sport gets a little bigger, certain things are going to end up changing. And I think the naming structure that we have for the different athletes or the different people within the sport will probably also change. It's changed with me. The term that I used because it's the common naming convention for people like me is hobbyist. I don't like the term hobbyist. I think it diminishes. I think it reduces. And I think that it puts people in a weird little box where they're not contributing like they should or could. When you hear pro, you automatically think competition, which is accurate. But you also think, oh, they're more invested. This is more a lifestyle. This is more, they're putting more time in. And that bothers me to no end. And the reason it bothers me is because there is a hobbyist in the gym. There is a group of people that I would label hobbyist. There's a group of people that I would label practitioner. And then there's a group of people that I would label maybe pros. And I don't think that you have to be necessarily one or the other. And I think oftentimes there is maybe a blend of two. And the reason I say this is because we split people within those two categories, hobbyist and pro. I don't think I'm a pro, but by default, that definition fits me. I make money off the sport. I teach. I do workshops. I provide services. So I'm technically a professional who's being paid. But I'm not a competitor. And in the sport, pro is often labeled or bestowed on the competitor, the person who's on the pro scene, on the pro circuit. They're at Fight to Win. They're Abu Dhabi. They're fighting at the Worlds. So there's a distinction within that we have bestowed on that group. And sometimes we feel like that group is more serious than everyone else or more dedicated to the sport than everyone else. And there's nothing wrong with that because I think it's rightfully earned considering how much time and dedication they've put to the sport and how it has engulfed nearly everything that they do. The practitioner for me is everyone who's serious about the art and sport. It's a general term for all the above. I think for me, that's where the majority of people will sit. And it's more it's more like bringing everyone in. It's more about the general form of the art. And it is a term that I will use for myself. And I think it's a term that you should use for most people, whether you're a competitor or someone who comes in 3, 5, 6 days a week and you're training hard, but you have a full-time job. You're training hard, but you have a family. You're training hard, but you have other obligations. Like you're a practitioner in judo. They just say judoka, someone who does judo. There is no, from my understanding, there is no like hobbyist versus professional. As an art, they are judokas. And I think that we don't have a specific term generally used for everyone. And to me, it's practitioner, it's jiu-jitsu doka, if you want to be technical. And it doesn't limit, it doesn't separate, it doesn't make someone feel less than because they're not on a pro level or they need to train differently because they have a family or whatnot. And then to me, a hobbyist, which is what most people get labeled, has almost such a like half-assed way of training. It's almost the way it views to me. I have hobbies. I like playing chess. That to me is a hobby. I pick it up. I play it for a couple of weeks. I put it back down. Weeks, if not months, will go by before I ever play again. And then I pick it back up and we play again. That's a hobby for me. That's something that I do occasionally. It's sparingly. I have not dedicated my life to. Jiu-Jitsu is not a hobby. Jiu-Jitsu is something that I am involved in every day of my life in some form or another. Whether it's writing, studying, thinking about ways I'm going to convey messages when I'm teaching, thinking about ways I'm going to convey messages to myself when it comes to addressing certain things that I'm maybe bad habits that I'm doing when I'm rolling. Like it's a full gamut of approach and it is interwoven within my life. It is not a hobby. It is not something I pick up and put down for weeks at a time. There are students who are hobbyists, and that's perfectly fine. I have a couple of students who come in, they train 2-3 times a week, and then they kind of disappear for a little bit. Life, family, they got other interests, perfectly fine. Does not bother me whatsoever. And then they come back, they pick it up again, and their journey is going to take a lot longer. We all know it, but there's nothing wrong with it. That it's a hobby for them. It's not something serious. It's something that takes up their time when they want to, and then they move on to other things and they come back. Hobby. What most students are doing, they are literally training anywhere from 2 to 3, 5, 6 days a week. They're not on a pro level. They're investing a lot of time into the art. They're training alongside the quote unquote pros. Some of them might be teaching in exchange for fees. Some of them might be coaching unofficially, but they're not making any money off of it. But they're invested in the art. Those are practitioners. Pros are practitioners. Jiu-Jitsu dokas, if you will. And I think that term, it's more encompassing of our journeys here. You can't invest 5, 6, 7, 10, 15 years, never turn pro and be looked at as a hobbyist. It just bugs me to no end. The other term that I want to cover is athlete. I think sometimes we, again, bestow athlete to the person that's competing. And I understand why we do it, and I understand why it fits. They're in a sport. They're training for a sport. They're probably lifting weights and doing other things outside the gym. They're doing things to better their sport performance. They probably have sport coaching outside jiu-jitsu. They might have a person that does strength and conditioning, maybe a little bit of mental work, game planning. So they are literally in the sport. And then you got everyone else that's training in the sport, but not for sport. And what I mean by that specifically is there's some people that are training for self-defense. Some people, their motivation is just to stay in shape. Some people, their motivation is the art of how to play the sport, but are not looking to compete. You're all athletes. We are all athletes. And I think that when we understand that this endeavor is athletic, regardless of whether you are a pro, quote unquote, or a practitioner, or even a hobbyist, you're an athlete. And that will shake the foundation to some people because they've never considered themselves athletes. They never played organized ball. They're never in the high school team at all. They didn't do wrestling. They didn't do track. They didn't do football or any of the other sports. They may have come here simply because they were looking for something different in their lives, maybe lose a little bit of weight. Maybe they came back they came here because of past traumas or something called them here. A friend was doing it and they loved it, so they jumped in. Understand that you are an athlete. You're pushing your body beyond the limits that you thought were possible, and then you're striving for new possibilities, whether you know it or not. Your body's adjusting. You're relying on your body. You're relying on your body to do certain movements that it was not doing at one point. That's athletic, and that's beautiful. So if we can start framing, because a lot of nerds come here, and I don't mean that derogatory. I'm a nerd. A lot of us come here and we did not have athletic endeavors, and we have this idea that, oh, we're just not athletic. My body's not coordinated. My body doesn't do what I want it to do. And then we get into the sport that's so much of a puzzle that we don't realize it's actually also an athletic event. And we're applying ourselves athletically. We're using some strength. We're using leverage. We're using timing. We're using our ability to move our opponent with the right mechanics. We're holding people down. We're pulling people. We're pushing people. All of this is athletic. And I think that once you break past that mold or that barrier where you're like, I'm not an athletic person, you start to really hone in on your body. And when you can genuinely get to the point where you can be honest with yourself, look, I am an athlete now. Most things are attainable. I can run that 5K if I wanted to now. I can lift heavier weight if I wanted to now. I can get into the other endeavors that I never really thought I was, because maybe I was a bookworm, or because everyone else was bigger and stronger than me and their strength was an asset and I wasn't. But now I've gotten this skill that allows me to do the things that I didn't think were possible at one point. So changing that mindset also gives you a sense of confidence that, hey, these other guys, football players, basketball players, they're athletes too. But so am I. So I think that framing that is going to be beneficial for a student's growth. The other term that I am often bothered by, and if people use it, I don't get offended, I don't get bothered, is professor. I don't like the term professor, and I don't like the term master. And I understand I'm coming from a more traditional gym and culture, and those two forms or terms are used regularly. I have never liked either term. I just don't. I don't like the term professor or master, but we're going to focus on professor because it's more utilized, because it separates you from the group. And yes, while there is some natural separation, you're the instructor, you're the coach. Professor seems to like, and I understand what it means in Portuguese, I get it. But professor gives this connotation in America where you're elevated beyond a certain level. And people inherently, because we don't speak of professors in that light, we speak to them as in all-knowing or really, really, really knowledgeable of certain fields, or like a professor in college. They didn't just graduate college. They didn't just graduate with a degree of some sort. They're elevated beyond that because of the level of schooling that they needed to get to that point. So that inherently kind of reflects on the term professor in jiu-jitsu, where we feel like, especially when you're like a white and blue belt and you're newer in the sport, there's a big gap between professor and the rest of the students. When you get to about purple, brown, you don't view it, I don't think, the same. It's just a term. But like for those people that are first coming in, they tend to look at things a little differently. It weighs a little differently. They'll treat you differently. I've had people who are like ultra respectful, like to the point where you're just like, sometimes I stop myself and like, what is he doing? Like, I should not be given that much reverence. I should not be given that much respect within this realm. And I think that it breeds a certain level of hierarchy where the student thinks the instructor is all-knowing and feels that the instructor is inherently good and will do everything that they should as people. And I don't subscribe to that. I've been around too many assholes. I've been around too many people who abuse their power or like to flex their power to get something out of someone. I've been around to it too long, 14 years. I don't subscribe to it. And I personally, whenever I am in a teaching role, call me Dave, David, Coach. Any one of those. There is little distance between me and anyone else on the mats. I don't want there to be a perceived difference. What I want us to view is that I'm a student just like you're a student. I'm just further along. Don't give me a fancy title. Don't feel like I'm royalty or of some class that is above you. I'm just more experienced. Let's have that type of relationship. And I think that happens when you are more coach. And coach in America has a very universal standing. You have a football coach, you have a wrestling coach, you have a baseball coach, you have a coach in track. These are very common to us, and we understand the hierarchy there. We don't view ourselves that different. Yes, there's a knowledge base, there's a authority there, but I think that it's viewed very differently in America than the professor student. So I personally prefer the coach student. And also in my view of what a coach does is they help you along. They are your escort through the sport that you're doing. You don't have to do everything I tell you to do, especially in the jiu-jitsu realm. If I suggest something, you don't have to do it. You can do it your own way. But understand that I would like to guide you on this course so that you don't make the same mistakes I make. That, I think, is the difference when I use that word. And again, it might just be me. Other people may not feel the same, but I personally do not go by coach. And the reason I think all this matters is, like I stated, it creates levels of hierarchy, and this sport already has so many just based on the belts. And sometimes we have these built-in rules where you don't call out the professor, you can't say no to the professor, quote unquote, and all these other things, that it creates this air of I can do what I want, or I am better than you, or I can create authority dynamics that are more skewed towards me. I want people to really enjoy the sport, and I want people to enjoy the sport without the filters and the weird dynamics that really don't need to be here. We are all students of the game. We're all students of what we're trying to attain, and I'm further along than you are, and someone else is further along than I am. And I respect the time that they invested, and respect the commitment and the sacrifice that was made to get to a specific belt or year in the sport. But I do not hold people in certain hierarchical, and I can barely say that word, levels anymore. I don't think it's beneficial. I think we're all just people trying to learn. Let's learn as much as we can. Let's be kind to each other. Let's be kind to ourselves, and just kind of move along. If there are any terms that maybe I missed or that speak to you or bug you, I would love to find out those. So I'd like to create a dialogue on this. If you have any questions about this or anything else, please reach out to me, dfmcoaching.com. If you would like to work with me, if you have direct questions, you can reach out to me at DFM099 on Instagram and Threads. I am huge about helping people and answering questions. So anything you got, please hit me up. Thank you.